Good morning. Good morning. I just want to tell you a couple things about the Shaker Heights Alumni Association. It was founded in 1983. We actually serve about and handle about 4 different projects. The first one will be to welcome each and every one of you as a member of the Shaker Heights Alumni Association upon your graduation, because we don't charge dues. Everybody who's ever graduated from Shaker Heights High School is a member of the Alumni Association. We will try to keep you informed of what's going on at Shaker once you graduate and go to college and then get on with your life by mailing newsletters to you twice a year. We coordinate your reunions, your 5-year, your 10-year, and even your 50-year reunions. And last but not least, this May we will grant 2 scholarships to 2 deserving graduates of the 1996 class. Today is the 10th, as you just heard, the 10th inductee assembly for the Shaker Heights Hall of Fame. And it's really great to be back here for the 10th time. I would like to, before I turn the program over to your class vice president, I would like to introduce Lisa Payne Jones, who's our executive director. Lisa? And now, the gal who you all know, the senior vice president, Whitney Marsh.
Our first honoree this morning is Jim Brickman. His single, Rocket to the Moon, made history as the first solo instrumental piano single to make the pop charts. His first experience with musical fame, however, came when he was a 15-year-old Shaker Heights high school student when his band won the WGCL-FM You Light Up My Life talent hunt. It is my pleasure to introduce Jim Brickman.
Thank you very much. Before I entertain you on the piano, because I figure if I'm going to come to Shaker, I might as well do what I always did here, which was always play the piano. Sometimes on this stage and sometimes in this room with nobody in it, because I used to sneak in when nobody was looking so I could play the piano. The thing that I remember most about being at Shaker is that I always wanted to do something that nobody ever let me do, which was play the piano. Nobody ever wanted me to pursue this as a career. I was supposed to be like a doctor or a lawyer or something, respectable, I suppose. Something that you go to college for and that your parents always want you to be. And for me, being able to pursue something that was really part of me and really in my heart was something that really wasn't the thing you were supposed to do. And so I want to share with you just a couple things that happened to me when I was in high school that may give you a little bit of motivation to just get out there and do whatever the heck you want to do and not let anybody tell you that you can't do it. Because whatever it is that you want to do, you can do if you really want it badly enough. I won this contest when I was in 10th grade. We won this band contest with a radio station at the time called G98. It was like the cool station to listen to at the time when I was in high school. And I won this contest for the best band in Cleveland after sneaking into this church and recording a song, putting it on the radio. We won this contest, and I was convinced, 15, this was my ticket out of Shaker High School, because I figured, great, I'm going to go on tour, I'm going to be like this big musician, I'm going to get out of Shaker, I don't need to go to school anymore, and all this kind of stuff. So the record company people started taking interest in me. I'm, like in 15 years old, I'm in 10th grade, I just barely got here, and I took the day off from school. I don't even know if my parents knew, but I took the day off from school, and I waited at my house for the record company people to come over. I'm thinking, okay, this big limo is going to come up, and they're going to whisk me away to Hollywood, and I'm not going to ever have to see Shaker again and everything like that. And they come over. Actually, they pulled up in this sort of jalopy. I was waiting for the limo to come, but they were like puttering up in this broken down car. And I auditioned, and they're like, you're like 15 years old. I mean, what do you mean? You're going to be like a rock and roll star? I said, You didn't know that I was 15 years old? He said, well, no, you won the talent contest. We didn't know you were like a kid. I said, well, yeah, but I mean, I'm a musician. Take me away from this nightmare place. I want to go to, I want to be like a rock and roll star or whatever. And they're like, you're 15. You can't go on the road, in some rock and roll band and smoky bars and drink alcohol and all that kind of stuff. So I told my parents, I'm sorry, I'm leaving. I'm going to go. I'm going to go. That's it. And they said, well, no, you're not. You're going to stay at Shaker, and you're going to go to school, and you're going to take your classes and everything. This was like my worst nightmare, because I'm playing on the radio. My song is playing on the radio. I have these record company people over at my house, and they want to whisk me away to my life, and I have to go back to Shaker Heights High School the next morning because nobody's going to let me be a rock and roll star. Sort of the moral of the story is that I ended up coming back reluctantly, but the great thing about it was that it's something that I always wanted to do. I wanted to play the piano, and nobody was going to say I couldn't do this. Nobody was going to say, you can't do this, you've got to be a lawyer or a doctor, even though that's what everybody was saying. And so my words to you and in sort of encouragement to you is to just take it for what it's worth here and enjoy the parts of it that you can get out of it, and get encouragement from here or anywhere else in the thing that you love to do. And don't let anybody, your friends or your peers or your teachers or your family or anybody tell you that there's something that you can't do or that you can't achieve in your life. Because if you love it and it's important to you, you can accomplish anything that you want to do. I was not a great student. I was a terrible student. I was encouraged to do a lot of independent study because I could never get into any of the AP classes or anything like that, and primarily it was because I was daydreaming. I'm looking out the window during math class, like writing melodies in my head, and I'm like, oh, did they call on me? What was that? And it just, to sit here now, to stand here now, and to be able to say, I'm a member of the Hall of Fame of Shaker Heights High School. If you would have told me that when I was sitting where you're sitting, I would have said, yeah, right, come on. I'm terrible in school. I'm blowing off half my classes because I'm playing in, backstage or I'm goofing off or whatever. And it's just important to remember that if you love something, you have to really be true to yourself. If you are true to yourself and you really believe in something that you love to do, no matter what somebody tells you, you can accomplish anything you want. And I thank you very much. I think what we're going to do is I'm going to play a little bit, maybe at the end of the show a little bit, and I'll share some of my music with you that you may hear locally when we're done with the assembly. All right? Thanks.
Our next honoree is Elizabeth Wilkerson. She has a background in business law and finance from Harvard University and Stanford University. While on a vacation in Japan, she was troubled by the misconceptions many Japanese have about Black life in America, and she founded the company Border Step in 1988 in Japan. It is my pleasure to introduce Elizabeth Wilkerson.
Hi, it's wonderful to be back here in Shaker Heights High School. I spent most of my time here in Shaker actually dancing on the stage and performing and producing concerts here. And the last time I was up here on the stage, a chair fell on my head from 10 feet above, so I have a different type of stage fright. I grew up in Shaker from grades 1 through 12. I was here, and I've always appreciated the multicultural background, the diversity of the community. And I had some very inspiring teachers. I had some very not so inspiring counselors and some educators here. I have a lot of bittersweet remembrances coming back here because, kind of like Jim was talking about, I feel that at times the institution of Shaker Heights High School tried to impose limits and definitions on where I should go and who I should be and what I should do. And at that time, I was spending most of my days dancing. In fact, I wouldn't show up to a lot of my classes because I was dancing, and that was okay by my teachers, and I appreciated the innovation and the flexibility of the school system at that time. One of my favorite teachers, I don't know if he's even still here, he's kind of a little bit off the mark, off the beam teacher. He'd like to say things to shake us up and to challenge our assumptions about the world. But I remember one time he looked out over the class of us and said, 50% of you sitting here now are going to be working at careers which don't exist now. And that comment was so outrageous. 50% of us are preparing for jobs they don't, what are we doing here if half of us are not even going to be working in a field we can identify? And like so many other comments of my teachers at that time, it went in one ear and out the other. It didn't make it into my notebook for the day, but somehow that comment stuck with me all these 2 decades later. And I remember thinking, how odd that he should say that. It's a future that we can't even see, and yet he's telling us that half of us are going to be working in that world. I went on to Harvard to dance, and after finishing Harvard, I moved to New York to dance professionally, and I hit New York at the same time that Ronald Reagan hit the White House recommending what at that time was a novel concept of zero funding for the National Endowment for the Arts. The military marching bands could get hundreds of millions of dollars, but the arts needed no money. And the hardest hit in New York at that time were I thought hardest hit were a lot of the African-American performing arts organizations. Theaters were closing, schools were closing, dance companies were folding. And I determined that if I wanted to have a career in the African-American performing arts world, I wanted to learn how to do it from the business/legal point of view. And I went back to Stanford to study. I moved to Tokyo after graduation. I was planning to move to Paris, but as life has it, you often don't end up where you think you're going. And I set up a company which presents African-American art/entertainment. If it's making money, we call it entertainment. And there's a huge market in Japan for American culture, especially for black pop culture, especially a lot of the culture that's defined by the youth, by people who are your age, really, high school, young adults. And if you go to Japan, there's salons where you can get your hair kinked or your hair shaved off is the latest fashion. You buy your baggy pants and pull them down so that your boxer shorts are hanging out. The young Japanese kids have completely adapted so-called youth African-American teen rap look. But our role in Japan is really to challenge some of the myths about black people which are perpetuated by Hollywood movies, which have a very limited, in my view, a very limited depiction of African Americans in Japan. And the young people, really, our target market is the MTV audience. The young people in Japan are so open to it and open-minded and willing to see things a little bit differently. And for that, I'm forever grateful. And it's really a source of optimism for me to think that the young people are going to be the ones who can perhaps see a different kind of world than the world that we're grappling with now, which is forever backsliding, it feels to me, and making lurches forward and trying to get along as we create diverse groups that are often groups of discrimination and arrogance as opposed to a celebration of cultural richness. And I was coming back to this presentation in Shaker, and I was thinking of my highlights of my high school education. I woke up and grabbed the remote control from a cable television, downloaded my email onto my little personal computer, and I was in touch by fax with Tokyo to find out if any companies were interested in satellite TV rights to the motion picture we're handling. And I'm remembering my teacher's words that 50% of us would be working in fields which don't exist. And the work I do every day didn't exist when I was a high school student. It's a new world, it's a different world. And thank goodness for the possibility for change. And I hope that you folks will recognize that change and create the future, which is your future, not anyone else's future, but yours. Thank you very much.
Our next honoree is Joan McCracken. She has used her nursing training and social conscience to improve conditions wherever she has lived and worked. Joan initiated what was to become the first Head Start program on the Prime Ridge Indian Reservation in Montana, and worked to initiate another such program for African American youngsters in North Carolina. It is my pleasure to introduce Joan McCracken.
My time at Shaker was as good as it gets, and it feels today as if I've come home. It's such an honor to be here today for this occasion, and it's a long-felt need to say thank you to a school system that had the best and gave the best. When I was here, it was that exhilarating post-World War II era. Add to that, we were young, confident, and so sure of ourselves that we envisioned a continued life of a good education at the best colleges and universities and jobs that would be fulfilling in every way. We felt prepared to take on the whole world. I had to leave Shaker to learn what the real world was all about. I learned the fallacy that poverty and a poor education was the fault of the poor. It was such a fallacy that we had thought when we were here. That unattended medical conditions could sap hope and energy from those that had little access to health care, and that the adage, "There but for the grace of God go I," applied to all of us who felt deserving of a continuous good fortune. After I left Shaker, I went to Duke University and became a nurse. And in those days, women were educated not so much to prepare for a career, but to have something to fall back on in case of widowhood. I had no intention of working in any capacity other than that of a mother. But life took me first to a small Eskimo village in Alaska, to a nest of impoverished sharecroppers in North Carolina, and to the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation in South Dakota. I knew I had something to offer, and offer I did. But the people I worked with taught me far more than I ever hoped to teach them. And it was through these experiences that I felt I was completing my education that started at Sussex Elementary School in 1941. I learned that all parents at the time of their baby's birth want and hope for better lives for their children and for an education that enlightened and prepares them for the world. I saw sadness in the eyes of parents who could not protect their children from hunger and hurt. And I learned that we were all in this world together. What affects a family in Croatia affects our peace. What affects disenfranchised Chile affects our freedom. And what affects the displaced in our inner cities affects our security. I realize now that our generation, despite our education and opportunities, does not have the answers. And you know, maybe we never even knew the right questions. And so we look to you and your generation to better solve the dilemmas on which we never focused until it was too late. And I want to close today with some words I copied from a cornerstone of a small church in a little village in Spain. And it said, "A day shall arrive when children will learn words that they find difficult to comprehend. The children of India will ask, 'What is hunger?' The children of South Africa will ask, 'What is racial segregation?' And the children of Hiroshima will ask, 'What is the atomic bomb?' And you out there shall be the ones who are going to have to answer. And hopefully you will say, 'They are the names of things fallen into disuse, such as galleys or slavery.' Those words have no meaning anymore, and that is why they've been taken out of the dictionary. I want to wish you good luck, and I hope for every one of you that you find your unique niche and make a real difference. Thank you.
Our next honoree is Martha Marsh. She pursued academic training in business and health administrations at Columbia University. She is currently Vice President for Managed Care for the University of Pennsylvania Health System and is responsible for all managed care strategies, contracts, and systems development of the 800 physicians and 750 hospitals at the University of Pennsylvania. It is my pleasure to introduce Martha Marsh.
Well, thank you. I'm very pleased to be here. Whitney told me last night that you were the tough audience. So I was trying to think to myself, what is it that a group of high school students would really want to hear from me, and what could I teach them that they don't already know? And after thinking about it a great deal of time, I decided it was not too much. But I would like to share with you a little bit about what Shaker meant to me and how it helped me in forming my own career development. And that was that when I was at Shaker, there were a lot of challenging opportunities. There were a lot of different, both academic and athletic and musical environments to be involved in. And the one thing I learned is that there was always someone that was smarter than I am. There was always someone that was better looking. There was always someone that was a better athlete. And I think for me, what was really important was, well, what does that mean for me? What am I if someone else is always better than I am? And I really learned that by taking advantage of all the courses that I was involved in and integrating all the things, and really the importance of my peers and my family, that through all those opportunities, I really had something that was really unique and really special, and that was what I was all about. And so as I've gotten involved in the healthcare field, which is really a very changing environment right now, as many of you know, it really has come home to roost. Those values and the things that I learned here have become very important to me. Because I work in a health system now where they're doing genetic research, where they can treat people with gene therapy, which was, I think as Elizabeth said earlier, was just unheard of when I grew up. They're doing surgery on babies that are still in utero in their mother's stomach and successfully correcting defects that these babies would have for the rest of their lives. And what I've learned is although that technology is critically important and that what they learn to do from a technical standpoint is save many lives, it doesn't work if they don't have good personal relationships with their patients. And if you don't make a system work for a patient and you don't know how to communicate with people and you don't think about what's important to other people. So that if I've learned anything that's been very important to me, it's take advantage of what's before us and what's really ever changing from a technological standpoint, and things will be very different for you than they are today. I told my children that I didn't have a VCR when I grew up, and they just sort of looked at me in total bewilderment and wanted to know what I did when I grew up. So I think things will be very different, but don't ever forget how important it is, your relationships with other people, how you communicate with them. And the words that you say are very important, and always remember that what you say may not be the words that someone else hears, and that you have to really think about what you're saying and what it means to someone else. And my favorite example of that was when J. Edgar Hoover was head of the FBI. He had dictated a letter to his secretary, and he didn't like the way she had formatted the letter. So he wrote on the bottom when he gave it back to her, "Watch the borders." And for the next 2 weeks, the FBI were patrolling Canadian and Mexican borders. So I hope you enjoy your time here, and it's very exciting to see all of you and think about the things that you'll be doing. And I want to wish you the best of luck. Thanks very much.
Our next honoree is Nina Caden. At the age of 16, she became Miss Voice of Cleveland, performed on the radio, and made a record. In 1994, Nina entered the Miss Senior Ohio pageant and won the contest. She traveled to Reno, Nevada for the national contest and was judged the top talent from all the states present. It is my pleasure to introduce Nina Caden.
Good morning, Shaker High. It's an honor and privilege to be inducted into the Shaker Heights High School Hall of Fame. I'm flattered and proud. Getting down to business, you're going to hear part of the original soundtrack of one song that I sang and tap danced in Girl Crazy at this very school on this very stage 46 years ago, under the direction of my favorite teacher and person, the unforgettable Reynold Ellis. I've got my man who could ask for anything more. Who could ask for anything more? Reynold Ellis was an innovator for me and the school. He initiated and produced Broadway shows at Shaker High, giving me the opportunity to realize my abilities and showmanship. Being in the choir and choral groups and musical extravaganzas at Shaker High seemed to make me popular among my peers, especially the boys. My parents were not able to support any musical education that would have been beneficial to me, nor did they understand it. You're born with certain gifts. I recognized this and found a way to teach myself. My confidence has been built by my own challenges and belief in myself and the support and opportunities at Shaker High. I was an 11th grader in 1949. All the disc jockeys announced a contest looking for Miss Voice of Cleveland. She had to be at least 18 years of age. I was excited, although reluctant. I contacted Joe Mulvihill from WTAM radio station. Over 200 aspiring hopefuls in all entered the search, and after all the preliminaries and final contest, I was named Miss Voice of Cleveland. It was a memorable time in my life, with prizes, gifts, and a special radio program starring me. When I came down to earth, I admitted to Joe Mulvihill that I was only 16. We both chuckled. I'd been in many shows, entertained, and sang with big bands since. More recently, in 1994, I entered another search, the Ms. America Senior Pageant. You had to be at least 60 years of age for one of the qualifications. I found no need to alter my age this time. I won the title of Ms. Ohio 1994 at the Nationals in Reno. The judges awarded me a Top Talent award for my singing and dancing. I'd like to share some of the words and phrases that encourage me when I need that extra boost. And of course, they are the song titles, which you may recognize. Accentuate the positive, climb every mountain, believe in yourself, make someone happy. I'm still performing, and just the other day, someone came over to me and said, "You made my day." Knowing that my talents contribute and inspire someone not only puts a smile on their face, but mine as well. I've got rhythm, I've got music, I've got my family and friends. Who could ask for anything more? I thank you.
Our next honoree is Jerry Habdi. She is a theater graduate of Dillard University in New Orleans, who has also earned a master's degree from the University of New Orleans in directing. She currently serves as the State Historic Preservation Officer for the state of Louisiana and Assistant Secretary of the Office of Cultural Development. It is my pleasure to introduce Jerry Johnson Habdi.
Thank you. One of the first things I learned when I was taking speech classes is that you have to establish your credibility, tell people what you do so they believe you when you tell them what they should do. In my position, I direct the Louisiana Division of the Arts, the State Office of Archaeology, and the Office of Historic Preservation. And I've come quite far from this room, but this is the room that saved me. When I was a student at Shaker Heights High School, I was not the best student. I remember there were semesters when I didn't know where my locker was, let alone my classroom. But And I used to jump out of the window so I wouldn't have to go to my typing classes and all that. And I didn't prepare myself at the time as well as I should have. But you know, I had to go back and learn how to type because I had to learn how to use a computer. I had to go back and relearn a lot of the things that I should have learned while I was here because I didn't take advantage of the opportunities that were here. I didn't understand that when my teachers were sending home those notes that I would get home and take out of the mailbox, they were doing it because they cared about me. And they were interested in me being in class to learn rather than outside hanging out because they knew I had potential and they expected me to achieve instead of expecting me to fail. And that's important. I come from a state now where the case is for most of the students, the teachers expect the students to fail. And that's very different from what you're going through right here. I heard a poem when I was in junior high school by Langston Hughes. And although I didn't have a dream at the time, I used to think of it quite often. Hold fast to dreams, for if dreams die, life is a broken winged bird that cannot fly. Hold fast to dreams, for if dreams go, life is a barren field covered with snow. Now, I know a lot of you don't know what your dreams are. Most of you know where you're going to school. I remember it wasn't a question of if you're going to college, but where you're going to college. But a lot of you don't exactly know where you're going. I knew I was going to college. I didn't know quite where at the time, even though I was a senior. But you have to find a direction in order to get there. Just like you got up this morning, you found your way to school because you knew where you were going. You eventually get there. You have to do that with life too. You have to find a direction and you will eventually get there. A lot of times I got scared and I wanted to quit, but my mother used to call me and say I didn't raise a quitter and I wouldn't. I went to the school and I wasn't sure what I wanted to do, but I wrote a play, and it was the theater that saved me from hanging out and from drugs and just doing the wrong thing. And I was able to go on and get a degree and work in arts administration because I felt that there was an important need to have more of a black presence in arts administration because, like Liz said, you have to shape the images that people see. I was able to provide more access to Afro-American arts organizations in the state of Louisiana, correct the images that you see in our tourism promotional information that you see when you're about to come to the state of Louisiana. I didn't know that I'd end up here, and I didn't know that I'd be able to impact the people that I did, but I did. But there were some teachers that were at Shaker who realized that it was important for me to go to class and share that I could be a future leader. And I want to thank them, and I want to thank you for your attention.
Our next honoree is Ralph Hexter. He is professor of Classics and Comparative Literature, director of the program in Comparative Literature, and acting chairman of the Department of Humanities and Committee of Medieval and Renaissance Studies at the University of Colorado at Boulder. His academic and scholarly pursuits have led to a number of fellowships for studies both here and abroad, including a National Endowment for the Humanities Fellowship for Study of the Italian Renaissance, a German Academic Exchange Service Fellowship for Study in Munich, and a Knox Fellowship for Study in Great Britain. It is my pleasure to introduce Ralph Hexter.
Thank you. I have a secret to share. I haven't graduated. Don't worry, Mr. Schonfarber, I am an alumnus. I got my degree. What I mean to say is that I've never left school for that supposedly more real world out there. My professional world is that of education. I'm a university professor. Every fall since 1957, when my mother walked me to kindergarten here, not in this school, in Onaway, my heart has beat faster as a new school year has begun. Through all the grades in Shaker, Onaway, Woodbury, which was then the junior high school, and this high school. And then, believe it or not, for another 12 years through bachelor's degree, 2 masters, and a PhD at Harvard, Oxford, and Yale. And as a teacher since then, first at Yale, now at the University of Colorado, and starting in January at the University of California in Berkeley. For me, this is my real world. For me, having the privilege and the duty to reflect on the relation between our current pressing concerns, the past, and the possible future makes it a more, not less, real world. Now, the so-called real world is bound by time and space. The university, the world of education, is both a magic carpet and a time machine. When I read, dream, talk, and write about ideas and issues, my companions are not only those who share our today and our here. I, my teachers, and my students, we all are in contact with Homer and Plato, Virgil and Dante, Shakespeare and Goethe, Flaubert and Melville, and today's writers, V.S. Naipaul and Alice Walker, to list only authors I teach regularly. But the pull of the so-called real world is potent. I was in many ways lucky, in part because, being such a geek, I was an outsider. A whole series of wonderful teachers, dedicated teachers, here gave me the courage to follow my own course. What I want to say to you today is that whatever your talents, your goals and dreams, be yourself. Dare to be different. Dare to be other than your friends, family, and above all, pollsters and advertisers tell you that you should be. Friends and family are at least well-meaning in their advice. They want you to have it easy and have usually learned, having made their own compromises, that it will be easier if you don't stand out too much. They want you to be happy, to have the good life, a theme of philosophy all the way back to Socrates. But unlike Socrates and other philosophers who derived their vision of the good life from other sources and via a hard-won process of thought, your friends and family, not surprisingly, envisage the life of happiness as their own. Even if they're not, in fact, truly happy, better the devil we know than the one we don't. Which is a shame, since the future will always be different. There will be new political alliances, new technology, new diseases, new cures. There is no way we can prepare for a certain future, for there is nothing certain about the future except that we will all eventually die. Until then, everything is up for grabs. So be prepared for change. Discover what you really want. Above all, what special gifts you have to give the world. The world of today may not want to hear what you have to say, as little as it wanted, indeed, as little as it still wants to hear, that I care about the life of the mind, that I study old and strange languages, that I'm a gay man. But I say on all fronts, get used to it. Unless you want to be stuck in a today that in an instant will be yesterday, make the world listen to you. Whatever your cause, push it. Be in their faces, but be smart about it. Know the facts, know more than they do. For you too have a part in making the future. Its course is not fixed. You can't control it, but you can contribute to it, and to see that it is the best possible future. Make sure we know who you are. Don't end up the construct of a focus group or marketing profile. Use this great school, however little time you have left here, to discover and reveal your difference. For the pull to conform, to be one of them, will only increase as the years go on. Education, the challenge of confronting the unknown, the different, even the queer, is the only way to find yourself. Treasure the chances your teachers give you. Don't take them for granted. You can come back to this place, as I have today, with great pleasure, but you will not come this way again. Thank you.
Our next honoree is Dr. Neil Glazer. He has returned to his roots in Shaker as principal of Shaker Middle School, which was Byron Junior High School when he attended classes there. The trip home has taken him from being a science teacher in Shaker and in Portland, Maine, to being the youngest high school principal in the United States in 1974 to 1976. My pleasure to introduce Dr. Neil Glazer.
It's really a great pleasure to be here, especially after suffering a near-death experience last night. The fly ball to center field in the 9th inning, I thought was going to carry right over the fence, but fortunately it was caught. And even more fortunate for those older folks that need their sleep, the game did not have to go beyond 9 innings. And that very shortly we will be off to the World Series. So it is a pleasure to be here, and I know the Cleveland Indians are a very hard act to follow, but I will try and do my best. I don't know how many students sitting in the audience have ever wondered what it might be like to be a Buddy Longo, or a Norma Geis, or from the middle school, a Faith Wise, or a Jim Alt. And how many of you have sat in a classroom looking at your teachers and saying to yourself, boy, if I had the opportunity, I could do it better. And I'm not sure how many have wondered if you ever had the opportunity to actually run Shaker Heights High School. Could you do a better job than Dr. Rumbaugh? And I've had the unique opportunity to go from a student at Lomond Elementary School to a student at Shaker Middle School to a student in this school. And just the things I was mentioning, wondering, would I ever have the opportunity to do it better? I have had the chance, a very unique opportunity, to just do that, to go back into my own school system with the desire to do it better. I know there's an old statement that says, if it's not broken, don't fix it. I hope someday that you will have the opportunity, and no matter what you do in life, to change that and say to yourself, I think it is broken, and I can fix it. Sort of remarkable that many of the people getting their accolades this morning admit to not being the best student in the world when they were here at Shaker Heights High School. And I am also one of those. It took me to my senior year until finally a teacher named Mr. Robert Burnett, who was an English teacher, turned to me and said, you can be a good scholar. And at that time, the problem was that Neil Glazer did not believe in Neil Glazer. And this is what Mr. Burnett taught me. That even though I didn't believe in me, Mr. Burnett believed in me, and he taught me a very important lesson, and that is to believe in yourself. Don't let anyone tell you that you can't. And just like the Cleveland Indians, when I was your age growing up, Cleveland Indians started out always in first place, and by the 4th of July, we were in last place. But now we're headed off to the World Series. No one can tell them or could tell them that they couldn't be the best. And the last lesson that I learned here when I was at Shaker Heights High School, and it was also taught to me by that senior English teacher, Mr. Burnett. By the time I graduated, I really thought I knew it all. And that's one of the wonders of being young, that you do think you do know it all. And then I discovered this. And it says, it's what you learn after you know it all that counts. One of the wonderful things about learning is you never stop learning. And just when you think you have reached the end, it really is just the beginning. Thank you.
Also inducted last night was Karen Stein-Galender, but she's ill at home right now with a pneumonia. But a little bit about herself is that her career interest in education began when she served as a reading therapist, counselor, and teacher to disadvantaged youth when she was just out of high school. Her dedication to improving social conditions emerges in all aspects of her life, from serving as president of the Youth Council on Human Relations in high school to founding Grassroots Against Bigotry and nonprofit organizations aimed at preventing acts of hate and providing community enlightenment. So we'll just give her a round of applause. She's not here today. Our next honoree is Glenn Paul Freiberg. His interest in working in science and health led him to a career in the healthcare industry, setting up and conducting safe and efficient clinical trials, meeting government requirements for manufacturing healthcare products, and bringing the results to the Food and Drug Administration. It's my pleasure to introduce Glenn Freiberg.
Good morning. As your last speaker this morning, I'd like to describe a formula for success. There are others, but in order to provide you something which I hope will be useful, I wanted to convey some guidance on the philosophy of how I arrived on the stage today, not just a list of accomplishments. The formula for success I'd like to tell you about, I call the skills triangle. It's based on a concept by Robert Katz, first published in 1955. The three parts of this triangle are technical skills, human skills, and conceptual skills. It is the balance of this skills triangle which has allowed me to assess my success and achievements in terms that include leadership. This leadership can be the role of a business executive, as I am now, or as the drum major, as I was here in Shaker in 1969 and 1970. In the spring of 1968, we had tryouts for drum major, and several of us applied, and I was selected. It was interesting and fun and a lot of work. In the spring of 1969, I tried out again and was selected for a second year. Then in the fall of 1969, it became even more work when our band director, Frank Hammond, had a heart attack. In summary, the principal said to me, "Can you take care of this on your own?" I said, "Sure." We had some help, of course, from the Woodbury band director, but for the most part, I fell into a position of leadership where I supervised peers, wrote halftime shows, directed them on the field, and it all worked out just fine. Now here's where the skills triangle came in. Under technical skills, I had to understand the music, choreography, timing for the show itself, and under human skills, I had to have what was then only 88 people, not the group you have now, work together smoothly, and in an unusual circumstance, which I led as a team effort, even though it was really an authoritarian rule. That is, I blew the whistle. I made the stop-go, yes-no decisions. Finally, under conceptual skills, these were required to envision and execute the big picture. The show itself, how it was organized, choreographed, entertaining, musically exciting, or at least reasonable considering how popular Herb Alpert was at the time, and do it in the allotted time. That's the balanced skills triangle in a position of leadership. Now let's fast forward 25 years to last month's Food and Drug Administration Immunology Advisory Panel meeting. My responsibility was to lead a team to reach approval of a new medical product, this one for cancer. Those of you who follow the news know that it is not a simple task to bring a new product before the FDA and achieve approval. In our case last month, we achieved approval by a 10-0 vote. And equally important, this vote was approved with no conditions at all. This kind of approval at the FDA is not common. But just as I couldn't play every instrument in the band, I could not do every task to get us to that point in the advisory panel conclusion. But I did apply the skills triangle. I have the technical knowledge to understand the physiology of the disease, the treatment of the disease, all the ins and outs of the product, how to create a statistically based clinical trial to demonstrate the product's safety, effectiveness, and clinical utility, then to execute the clinical trial, prepare an FDA application that is user-friendly to the reviewers at the FDA, supervise my staff, clinicians, and in general run the project. And this project is one of many running concurrently. The human skills include managing the team I told you about. They're hardworking people and talented, very, very positive people, keeping them motivated and on target to meet our product, project, and timeline objectives. Now, while the Shaker Band was made up of volunteers who really wanted to be there and to participate, the workplace, like the classroom, is not filled with the same volunteer spirit. Most of them want to be there, but the demands on human skills management are much greater than a non-volunteer organization. Finally, the conceptual part of the project culminated in the advisory panel meeting, which is an oral presentation before a panel of nationally known experts. All the planning efforts and volume of paperwork led to this presentation. Less than half a day, we summarized the results of the multi-year project in a way that told them what they needed to know and achieve this approval. My recommendation to you today is to think about that skills triangle and balance it. On technical skills alone, it's rare to succeed. Thank you.
Let's give all of our inductees a round of applause. We thank you so very much. If there are individuals who wish to remain and dialogue with either of these persons, you are welcome to do that. In the meantime, our guest pianist will start playing as you exit the auditorium for your next class. We apologize for that, but you will hear his music as you're going out quietly.
This is a song, this reminds me of a wedding I played one time. A song called Angel Eyes.